Beyond the headlines. This is World Insight.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. As German Chancellor Friedrich Merz makes his way to China for an official visit, what could this trip mean for a key economic partnership of both sides? On the heels of new U.S. tariffs after a top court ruling, Merz's visit takes on added significance. So it's time to take a closer look at the opportunities and challenges facing German businesses in China and beyond. And what could this partnership mean for both economies and businesses on both sides? How could this high-level visit help stabilize economic ties at a time of global uncertainty? On this and more, my exclusive interview one-on-one with Oliver Zipse, the Board of Management Chairman of BMW, who accompanies German Chancellor Friedrich Merz on his crucial trip to China on the future of Sino-German cooperation. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. As a member of the business delegation visiting China on the sideline of the Chancellor's visit, what do you make of the strategic significance of the Chancellor's visit? What kind of outcome, as a business leader, are you looking forward to?
First of all, it's an honor and a privilege to join Chancellor Merz on his first visit to China. This visit sends a strong signal for dialogue, collaboration and mutual trust, because these are crucial ingredients not only for the future of Sino-German partnership, but also for tackling today's complex global challenges together.
Now, Mr. Chairman, we all know that BMW has been operating in China for more than 30 years. How do you see China today is strategic significance for your company and your industry? What are some of the most important areas you are watching very closely to work with China?
Well, China is the largest automotive market in the world and one of the most important technology and innovation powerhouses for our industry. Therefore, have a very strong footprint in China, which entails, among many other things, our Shenyang production base and our largest R&D location outside of Germany. In a couple of weeks, we will show our China capabilities once again. At the Beijing Auto Show, we will present our first Neue Klasse model for China, the BMW iX3 in the long version. It is the most Chinese car we've ever built, tailored specifically to the needs and wishes of our Chinese customers. It features many innovations from our partnerships with leading Chinese players, as for example, battery cells come from CATL. Autonomous driving stack is jointly developed with Momenta, and the large language model for the BMW Intelligent Personal Assistant is the result of our long-standing partnership with Alibaba. These features are a perfect example of cross-border collaboration, joint pioneering spirit and mutual openness. We are convinced if you want to thrive globally, you cannot miss out on China's innovation potential.
Mr. Chairman, as we all know, we are at the crossroad, seeing great transformation. Artificial intelligence, for example, geopolitics, for example, and also the future of electronic vehicles. How is your company, BMW, looking at all these latest trends and try to figure out where the industry is going and you are still going to stay as a leader in the industry?
Individual mobility remains highly important and a very attractive industry. We see major trends which have a major impact: electrification, digitalization, and artificial intelligence, sustainability and scrutiny from regulators worldwide. We have a strong business model and all the ingredients for future success. A consistent strategy, a pioneering spirit across the entire value chain, a strong global footprint, successful cross-border partnerships, financial stability, and long-standing customer orientation. Therefore, we are confident that we will continue to shape the industry's future and to play a leading role.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, for joining us. Really appreciate your time out of a very busy schedule. As global trade relationships are being reshaped and businesses navigate in an increasingly complex landscape, one message is becoming ever clearer. Engagement with China has become a strategic imperative. That is the takeaway from 3 top executives of the American, British, and Canadian business communities in China. James Zimmerman, the chairman of AmCham China, Sebastian Wood of China-Britain Business Council, and Graham Shantz, the president of Canada-Chinese Business Council. They talk about confidence in China's openness to the global economy. And here are excerpts of my interviews with them. Jim, good to see you. Thank you so much for your hospitality.
Good to see you too.
Jim, as you have noticed, there are quite a number of state visits over the past few weeks coming from what they term themselves as the so-called middle powers. Canadian Prime Minister, British Prime Minister, now to mention Prime Minister from Finland and also from Ireland and others as well. So how do you see ever-increasing interactions between these economies, well-developed economies, many of them are G7 members, and the Chinese economy?
I think it's important that those so-called middle economies, that the middle powers, that they have their own paths with China. China's a very large economy. And all of these middle powers have something to offer to China. They shouldn't rely upon the United States to carry the day for them. So I think it's a good thing. Part of it too is keep in mind that a lot of the business is very much integrated. The United States and Canada, business is integrated. The United States and the UK, business is integrated. So if there are things that are accomplished by the UK government or the Canadian government or whoever, that oftentimes benefits the multinational business community. So, if they're here to work things out, to improve the business environment for UK business or Canadian business, overall that will affect, in a positive way, AmCham member companies.
Talking about AmCham, the results of their annual Business Climate Survey. Some interesting point I have noticed in the readout. One is less concern about geopolitics compared at least to the year 2025. Secondly, is more confidence about profit for businesses. Tell me more about that.
The Business Climate Survey shows that there has been a rebound in profitability and specifically to consumer goods, services areas, and so on. That's a good sign. It's a good sign that we do have, increased profitability. But more than that, what we're seeing through the survey is that China is still in the top 5, top 3 for many companies. So China is still a very strong strategic market. We're also seeing that companies are not decoupling. They're not wholesale leaving China. And that is a very positive reflection that the market is still, important for their companies. Geopolitical tensions are still a concern. It's in the top 3. But also the Chinese economy is one that we are monitoring and taking a look at, and there could be improvements, policy improvements that could improve the economy in certain ways. But that's something that is very much on the minds of business.
There was a time when media stories, particularly in the U.S., talking about, U.S. businesses are leaving China. So that is not necessarily what is going on right now, at least according to your climate survey.
I've been here for almost 30 years, and there has always been talk about companies leaving, people leaving. And a lot of that has to do as China's economy matures and there's changes, in the way things are manufactured here, and there's changes in the way things operate here. There are going to be some companies that make the strategic decision to move elsewhere, and it may be a cost issue, but that has always been a topic of discussion for at least the past 30 years. And those are more strategic decisions on behalf of business. But we don't see the wholesale departures that people have anticipated. I mean, we saw some departures, or restructurings during COVID. But that was more of, a strategic decision to, to better improve the supply chain issues.
Meanwhile, we see many European businesses are actually moving into China due to various reasons. So the Chinese market was going to be even more competitive, not just the Chinese companies vis-a-vis the international company, but also among, as we all know, the international companies themselves. So whoever has a stronger footing will have a better say in the market share, it seems.
In order to be relevant, you need to be here. This is the second largest economy in the world and potentially would be the first largest in the world at some point. But to be relevant, to be a relevant player in the market, not just a relevant player in China, but in the global market, you need to be here. And that is, and that's important.
We have seen in China's 15th five-year plan, the new productive forces being mentioned, new quality growth. How is the U.S. business community looking at these new trends going on in China and taking advantage of it for your businesses not here, but also all over the world?
From a historical perspective, I think the last 4 or 5 year plans have focused on innovation, have focused on having China move up the value chain on innovation. That is natural, and that is important. It's important for the Chinese people. We're moving away from labor-intensive, industry sectors to being more innovative and driving an innovation-based economy. That's all good. The American business community, the AmCham business community, realizes it needs to tap into that. And it's very important that we be here as China focuses its policies on creating an innovation-focused, environment. Promoting R&D, promoting high-level, growth.
But we still see export controls, for example, policies like that by the United States, particularly in the innovation area related to AI, to chips. Now, American business community have been arguing, if you do that, the Chinese going to develop their own, and eventually we're going to end up with no market. And that has been very strong voice. But whether that business voice has worked so far, your thoughts?
Export controls really need to they must have a rational legal basis. Are the controls truly about national security, or are you overreacting, overreaching? And that's always been an issue. Export controls have been around for hundreds of years, and if you overreact, what happens is you drive the other side that's subject to controls to self-sufficiency, 1, or 2, your allies, your competitors are going to step in and fill the market as well. So export controls only work if it's truly based upon a legal basis, a national security basis, or controls because of shortages or whatever the reason is. But if you overreact, if you overreach, it doesn't help the U.S. economy, and it basically drives those that are targeted again, into self-sufficiency or looking for other suppliers.
Everybody in the world is aware of the rift taking place across the Atlantic. How does the UK look at its business and economic relationship in the overall global backdrop?
Well, I think I'd just make 2 broad points. The first is that the UK is an open economy and has been now for a very long time. We have noticed also that China has maintained a commitment to continuing to open up to foreign trade partners. So that is our response to the protectionism which we see growing in some other parts of the world. And it's the right response, for the UK and China to recommit to open trade and to rules-based international trade. So that's the first thing I'd say. And the second thing I'd say is that as an open economy, the UK has to take the opportunities of the world's 3 great markets, if I can put it like that. The US is certainly one of those great markets. The EU single market is the second. China crucially, is the third of those three great markets. And we need the best possible trading and investment relationship with all three of those markets. And no one should expect us to choose between them.
Tell me how complementary this could be for the UK when the European continent as a whole is searching for new opportunities of energy.
You raise an important point, and China is actually leading the world now in some of the most important technologies of the coming century, including renewable energy technology, solar and wind power, and also, of course, battery technology and battery storage. And China is on the way to becoming the world's first electro-state, if I can
so
put it like that.
Yes.
This needs to be better understood in my country, in the UK, and we should see Chinese investment in those sectors as an opportunity to raise our own game and to actually modernize and invigorate our own renewable energy industry. We have, of course, strengths in that area. We have outstanding globally leading scientific research and innovative capability, and some great companies. But more Chinese investment in those sectors would, I think, be very good for the British economy, and the same is true in Europe.
We have seen the Chinese renewable energy or new energy developing on the global landscape, and yet some of the latest policies in some economies are preventing it from sharing more benefits of that with the rest of the world. How predictable do you think, Mr. Chair, your organization is trying to nurture that environment in terms of policy in the UK?
Every country is going to want to protect its national security. Every country is going to want confidence that they know what is going on in their critical national infrastructure and that they can control it. So there will inevitably be some limits on investment. In China, of course, those limits exist as well. The important thing, I think, is to have law and regulation which is transparent and predictable, so people know where the limits are, and when they're investing in permitted areas, they know that they're going to have a lot of support and a very warm welcome from the host country. And traditionally, that has been a strength of the UK, to have that kind of transparent and predictable framework. So that's what I would like to see.
About artificial intelligence, you have seen the 15th five-year plan. You've already seen the draft of it, in a way, at the end of last year.
Yeah.
AI plus is the China approach. Some describe the interesting differences in the approaches between the United States, for example, which is also a leader in artificial intelligence, vis-a-vis China. One is reaching for the stars, so to speak, the AGI. The other is more open source and AI plus, AI applications. How does the UK consider its own path in artificial intelligence development? And what do you think can be the potential that you can tap in working with China?
Well, of course, we have a lot of very dynamic and exciting companies that are active in this, perhaps the most dramatic area of new technology that exists in the world today. So I think the UK has a lot to offer a partner like China in the development of artificial intelligence, and also in the way to apply it in the real world to make our lives better. And this is where China's open source model has particular strengths, of course. I'm not an expert on artificial intelligence, but my understanding is that the most advanced chips, not in China, are in other economies. But perhaps the most advanced application of artificial intelligence today is happening here in China, aided by this open source AI model that you're talking about. So it's certainly an area where I think there's great potential for the UK and China to do more together.
Let's talk about what is right in front of us. The journalists always do that. So what about the cars, the EVs? We see the deal between China and Canada. It's about reducing the tariffs on the Chinese EV into Canada, but there's a cap over there. Meanwhile, China has also lowered the tariffs on some of the farm products coming from Canada into China. Tell us how this balance of deal is being done.
It looks, it's great to see. You've got to situate these tariffs in the context of the respective economics of and diplomatic relations, trade relations. That was set up, it appeared from my perspective, by the two governments as the standoff. So that had to be dealt with, and it's great to see that there's an agreement. The details of which have a certain number of vehicles, I think it's 49,000 initially, rising to 70,000 down the road. Inside the structure that you mentioned, Wei, which is the tariff rate quota structure, the Prime Minister didn't use that in his speech last night. But as a former trade negotiator, I know exactly how that fits, and it's good to see that rising over time. The most, from a Canadian interest perspective, what I found most interesting and important in terms of what the Prime Minister said on the very specific details of EVs is that China is a world leader in the technology and in the production. And there's it's a value proposition that will have the effect, and he took some pains to talk about the price point coming into Canada. As a Canadian, it's a lower price point than others can supply the Canadian market, which is super important in terms of the transition on vehicles, because at the moment, EVs are almost unobtainable by normal Canadians, if I can put it that way. It's good to see that that's part of the consideration, but equally importantly, it's not just the sale of cars manufactured in China into the Canadian market. It's a commitment to see the possibility of assembly operations in Canada by Chinese EV manufacturers over time. My own hometown is in an area that's in the middle of the car industry in Canada, Southern Ontario, a little town called Waterloo. Has a famous university, but it's in that whole zone, that belt is the auto zone in Canada. So it was great to see that there's the possibility of assembly in Canada, which is really important because we have a very good world-leading parts manufacturing operations in that area, some of which have actually come over here and have substantial investments in China.
Many of the farmers in Canada are also applauding right now because we have seen the reduction of tariffs against the Canadian farm products by China. So what does that mean? How much impact will that make?
I think it'll make a lot of impact for Canadian farmers, as well as we have meat producers as well, and in canola, on pulses. There was a deal on pet food, which is also affecting our agricultural sector, on seafood. So for the farmers and the ranchers and the seafood harvesters and the seafood production, it means a lot. And stepping back, I think from China's perspective, Canada should be viewed, whether it's on farm products, agricultural products, as a trading partner in general. We're politically stable. We've been having access into the China market from even before we had political diplomatic relations. We had wheat sales. So the quality is there, the reliability is there, our political stability is there. So as a diversified supplier into the China market on the agriculture, agri-food, food, value-added food, Canada should be viewed inside China as a long-term and reliable trading partner that can go through the ups and downs and the waves on the international ocean, if you will.
Canada is located in a place in which your biggest neighbor is the United States. And meanwhile, we have also seen the phrase of so-called Western Hemisphere becoming ever popular in some of the headline stories. So, Mr. President, tell me more about how do you assess your neighborhood, and as a result of the latest changes, what does that mean for Canada? And what does that mean for Canada's relationship with China, even though we are celebrating a great result after this time's negotiation and meeting?
Well, I think we've built on the trade side, we have been building over the years an architecture of trade agreements globally, much like China has. And in our case, if you look at the CPTPP, for example, the Canada-Europe agreement, it's an expression of a desire by previous governments, reinforced by this government, to diversify our export market. I think it's fair to say what's going on in the Western Hemisphere, in North America, is a reminder of the importance that business needs to take advantage of those agreements to diversify their own interests, investment interests, export interests as well, to the benefit of prosperity in Canada as well. What's new now is it's great to see a political emphasis, the visit of the Prime Minister here, which is very important. There was one little small piece of what was announced yesterday, which included Canada's desire and China's support for Canada to host APEC in the year 2029. My point is the political signaling by doing that is the answer to your question. And I think it's very important not only to have the architecture of a framework agreement through trade agreements, I think it's important that the political signaling be viewed as well, to show to the Canadian businesses, to Canadian communities, the importance of Asia to Canada's economic security.
That's all the time we have for today. I'm Tian Wei on behalf of the team. Thanks for being with us.